Alright guys, you know what pisses me off? So at Night of Champions, I know I mentioned this before, that they plan on obviously having Rollins face both Sting and Cena in the same night. And in a previous episode, I had just mentioned that I think it would be a smart move for them to have Rollins drop the US Championship to John Cena and then beat Sting later that night in the main event. Because being a traditionalist or being a fan in general, my mindset is that, well, obviously the WWE Championship is going to be defended in the main event. That just makes sense. That's apparently not the case, because as rumors are flying around, they are saying that Sting versus Rollins is actually going to be starting the show, and his match with Cena is going to be the main event. Why? That doesn't make any sense. First and foremost, it deflates any hope for any kind of sensible build for Rollins, because, you know, with the whole concept of him losing the title to Cena, but then beating Sting, he's walking out of Night of Champions with a victory under his belt against a guy like Sting. Now, with it being the starting match, I can't see him, first of all, beating Sting cleanly to open the show. Maybe that happens, but even if that does happen, and then he goes on to the main event against Cena for the US Championship, I don't see him winning 2 matches in a night. So if they still go with the same theory, but now they're flipping it on its head, so now we have him defeating Sting for the WWE Championship to start the show, which puts him in a really good standing, but to end the show, he's going to lose and drop the title to Cena. That makes zero sense. You were destroying any hope for any kind of build for this guy. That's not the way to do it. You know, I mean, I see it as, because him starting the show, you have Sheamus with the briefcase, which you have to take that into consideration. So will he lose that title to Sting, and then will Sting get cashed in on by Sheamus getting him heat? That seems like WWE logic to me, and I don't really care for that at all. And I really, this could be extremely damaging. You know, he needs to have a victory leaving this pay-per-view. He doesn't have any meaningful wins under his belt. You know, right now he's not a credible champion, and he's not a credible superstar. This was their opportunity to do that, and once again, they're blowing it. And even beyond that, even beyond this really possibly being damaging to Seth Rollins, I mean, it takes away the whole purpose of a main event. I mean, what is a main event? To me, in my root definition of a main event, is the point of the show that people pay to see. You think about boxing, you think about UFC. People aren't paying to watch the undercard. I mean, there may be guys on the undercard that you enjoy to watch, but you're paying because of the main event. You know, you're paying to see Ronda Rousey fight. You're paying to see Conor McGregor fight. You're paying to see Floyd Mayweather fight, Manny Pacquiao fight. You know, you're not really paying for the undercard. You're paying for that main event. So that's the way, at least as far as I know it, that's the way a main event has always been treated. Even in wrestling, you look back at the 80s, and this is a perfect example because they were really heavy on this in the 80s, and I thought it was a really, really good model for how they should build their business. You look at a pay-per-view from the 80s, and you see a stack of, you know, you have a lot of undercard guys who maybe they're not as popular, they're not as good. You're not paying for them. You might enjoy watching them, and there were a lot of great undercard matches, just like in any other sport. But you're paying for that main event. You're paying for that Hogan versus Andre the Giant, Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior. You're not paying for any of that undercard stuff. You know, that's the match because you know that match is important, and every single time that match involved a WWE, WWF title. So what makes this any different? I think I would be less annoyed by this if the WWE Championship was lower on the card. Like maybe if it was, I understand that because he has 2 matches, they need to space them out. But this is, especially when you're dealing with the WWE Championship, you're really, really, you're really ruining the worth of this title. You're really lessening its worth. And I mean, I don't know if they're doing this because they're trying to elevate the other titles. You know, I know that for a while they were trying to bring the U.S. Championship back up to its former glory. They were trying, you know, they gave it to Cena, hoping he could build it up, put some spotlight and attention on it, which it worked. You know, that was doing a great job. I was a little bit more interested every week in the U.S. Championship because of what Cena was doing with it. But you cannot elevate, you know, the other titles by devaluing the other ones. You can't do that. You can't elevate a title by devaluing the other titles on the roster. So by putting that WWE World Heavyweight Championship as the open to the show, in theory, with, you know, what they're trying to do with Seth Rollins, I understand it, but you're devaluing that title. You're making it seem worthless. People pay because, you know, when that title's in the main event, it's in the main event for a reason, because people know that title means something. You take it out of the main event, you're getting rid of its meaning. Now it's just any other title on the card. It doesn't mean as much anymore because, well, that title's not in the main event, so obviously it's not as important. The U.S. Championship, that's the main event. That one's much more important. So now you're devaluing that title, and it's bad enough it's on a champion that you haven't built to be credible. On top of that, now you're also moving it out of the main event. Right now, to me, it's more important for you to make sure that that title stays important, more important than any other title. And I'm a huge Intercontinental Championship fan. I love that title. I actually like that title more than the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. But I believe that you look at any other sport. They want to be a reality-based show. They want it to be believable. But they're not taking any steps to make it that way. You know, you look at boxing, you look at UFC, they all have that one title in each division that is quintessential. And, I mean, I just feel like right now they don't have weight classes in the WWE, so it's not like they can have different divisions. You know, there's that invisible, you know, you have the low card, mid card, and then the main event guys that are on the top of the card. You have that kind of, but that's not really, I mean, it is and it isn't realistic, but the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, since the beginning of time for this industry, that title, that main title, has been the title. So why now all of a sudden are you trying to change that? It's not, you don't have enough foundation to be able to do that. It's just frustrating to me that title is going to start the show. There's no reason for it. You have so many other options. You can keep that the main event. I understand maybe Seth wants to have that match first so that he can make sure he can get it done. But how much more impressive would it be if he loses to Cena in the beginning of the show, after a hard-fought battle, but then comes back, and you can even do backstage segments where you're building this guy up. He's angry that he lost to Cena. I will not lose again. And then he doesn't. He goes in, and he actually beats Sting, and the last thing you see on that pay-per-view is Seth Rollins standing tall. Now we're going to get probably the polar opposite of that, which is him maybe going over Sting, maybe not. But at the end of the day, at this point, it really doesn't matter, because after that, there's a pretty good chance, and I have a strong feeling that he's not going to go over John Cena. And now you're going to have him, the last thing you see on the pay-per-view, instead of him standing tall with the WWE World Heavyweight Championship over Sting, you're going to have him losing to John Cena. That's the way that I'm seeing this going down. I'm very worried about it for his sake, for the WWE Championship's sake, and it's just, I understand that it's a new era of wrestling, and I get that, you know, me comparing it to the golden age of wrestling, it's a different era. I mean, you have much more talent on the roster. It's more of a reality-based era. I get that, but I still think you should have that one main title, because that's just the way you've been building it for so long. You kind of can't go back now. You can't try to just, you know, at the drop of a hat, you can't just change it because you feel like it, because that just leads to a lot of confusion amongst us fans. And, you know, we're expecting to see the WWE. If you ask any fan of the WWE right now, what's the main title on that roster, everybody knows WWE Championship. That is your main title. You can't have your main title to start the show. People should be paying to see that title. That's the point of what you're doing here. That's the point of a main event. That is the definition of a main event. And by putting it in the beginning of the show and not in the main event where it belongs, you're devaluing it. And by association, devaluing Seth Rollins more than he already is. And I just think that this is a very poor decision. I don't understand it. It's illogical to me. Again, I'm a traditionalist, so I bank on that title being in the main event. I bank on that title being the main title. I don't mind there being co-main events. And like I said, I might be a little less frustrated if this match wasn't opening the show and it was closer to the end. If it was a co-main event, I could kind of look past it. I would still be frustrated, but I could look past it. But I mean, I understand that they need that gap because he has 2 matches. He can't just go from one huge long match with Sting and then the next match is another match with Cena. That's just not, I don't care how athletic you are, that's not easy, and you're not going to be able to put on 2 quality matches that way. I get it. But with that being said, they should have already taken that into consideration and realized we really can't devalue. That's your really only title of value. The only reason Seth Rollins is he's not established, but the only reason he's kind of meaningful is because of that title. What happens if he loses that title but keeps the U.S. Championship? That title has no value. He has no value. Therefore, now everything is meaningless. He's being kept afloat by the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. And I've used this term before. That title is like a flotation device. Most people in the WWE right now are drowning. If you're holding that title, your life is probably going to be saved because you can hold on to that title and your head's going to be above that water for a while until you drop it again. But that seems to be, and by putting it in the opening, him possibly losing it, I don't see this being a good thing for anybody. I don't see this being a good thing for Rollins. I don't see this being a good thing for that title. And I sure as hell don't see this being a good thing for us fans. Very frustrated by this decision. I hope that this rumor stays a rumor and doesn't actually come into fruition, because that would be a huge, huge mistake on the WWE's part. And all they had to do was listen to the breaking point, and they would have had everything mapped out for them in my previous episode, where I told them what they had to do, but they don't want to listen to me. That's fine. I understand. I would have just made Night of Champions a show to remember, but that's okay. Alright guys, it's about that time again. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to The Breaking Point. Make sure that you join me right back here tomorrow morning, same time, same place, and as always, consider the point broken.